I'm here with a book tag. I'm here with the book tag. I'm here with the book tag. Do, 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 do. That's crazy because I sing Pop Goes the Weasel so freaking much. It's stuck in my head. It's the perks of having a little one. Hey y'all, it's Ashley Bookstrom and I'm here with a book tag. As you can see, this is the Black History Month book tag. So this definitely had to go up. The first video of February had to be the Black History book tag. And this tag was created by the lovely Helene over at Books by Lanes. And Helene was smart, okay? Let me tell you this, because I read, like I told y'all in that video, the discussion video that I just put up, I was reading y'all's comments, really was genuinely going through and reading comments as they were posted to the video. I just won't be able to respond to them. But Helene told me that a new tag was being created or had already been created on their channel and that it would be fun if I did the tag. So I was like, yeah, of course, I would love to. So this is the Black History Month book tag. Lots of great questions. Some of the questions, Helene said one book and I didn't listen. I'm horrible at following directions. So for some of these questions, we're gonna have more than one book because I just had a very hard time deciding. So let's go ahead and jump in. The first question is, what is a book everyone should be reading during Black History Month? Give one fiction and one nonfiction title. So I'm gonna mix this up a little bit. I actually have 3 fiction titles and 2 nonfiction titles. One that I think everyone should read that I have not read myself, but I think it would be fun, if not fun. I think it would be eye-opening if we all read it. And then one that I have read that I'm going to explain. I couldn't make this list without including the D. There's so much packed into this book. We all know how I feel about this book. This was on my favorites of 2020. This is one of my favorite books of all time. I think that this book explores so much just about the Black experience and its entirety in the sense of community and trauma, intergenerational trauma, and how those things are handled, especially in the forms of memory and carrying those burdens of memories. And it's just poetic, it's beautiful. So of course with the development of this book, there was a process. So Drexia actually came up with the whole concept of this underwater group of mer people, and then the clipping got a hold of it and retook what Drexia had done, and we're looking now at an underwater group of mer people who are descendants of pregnant slaves. And then the torch was passed to River Solomon, and they did a marvelous job with this book. So as always, I will make sure that I link our live show up in the card symbol above, because we talk about this book for hours on end. Just this is how great this book is. Even though it's short, it's so great. It's so great. The next one that I have on this list is actually one that I just read this year in January, and that is The Awakening of Malcolm X, written by Ilyasa Shabazz with Tiffany D. Jackson. And this is a book that covers Malcolm X's time while he's in prison, so in his 20s, and this was so wonderfully done. They do take a little creative liberty with writing this book. They say that just to kind of fill in some of the gaps, but it specifically just looks at the time in which he's in prison. He kind of goes through his awakening process because he was raised under the principles and thoughts and practices of Marcus Garvey. His parents were followers of Marcus Garvey. As he gets older, he moves to Harlem. He kind of lets all of that go, and then when he gets to prison, he starts to go through this reawakening process, and it becomes a part of the Nation of Islam. There are a lot of interesting tidbits about Malcolm X in this book, his time being a part of the debate team when he gets transferred from one prison to another prison. There's conversations about the treatment of Black bodies, understanding your place. And I don't want to say understanding your place, but understanding how people view your physical presence, no matter how intelligent you are. And I say that, and I probably worded that a little strangely, but it's all about how Malcolm X was looked at as being a good person by some of the wards until he started to become extremely educated, and it became threatening, and a lot of individuals did not like that. So no matter how good a place may be on a surface level, it was kind of this conversation about you will always be Black in the eyes of other people no matter what. So very, very, very great book. If you're looking for kind of a different perspective, I don't want to say different because different is probably not the right word, but if you're looking for a little bit of introduction to Malcolm X, I would recommend picking this up, especially if you haven't read the autobiography of Malcolm X. My last fiction book that I have on this list is What a Crazy Summer by Rita Williams Garcia. I talk about this one a lot. This is a really, really great children's book series about three girls who go out to Oakland to see their mother who has been an absent mother. I think what I really enjoyed about this one is seeing a different perspective given about the Black Panther Party. I think that a lot of times when we're taught information about the Black Panther Party, we always get the extremist or the radical perspectives that people want to give about the Black Panther Party without looking at what they were attempting to do for the Black community. And Rita Williams Garcia definitely does change that narrative by writing this book. So that's another part of Black history that you might want to check out. For nonfiction, the one that I did read that I think everyone should read is Twisted: The Tangled History of Black Hair Culture by Emma DeBerry, and I really, really enjoyed this one. I did a full review on this one last year and talked about my own Black hair journey or experience, and I just want people to read this because I think that when people think about racism, they only think about the big picture of racism. I think that people think, you know, like racism, white people who have issues with Black people, and that's just it because of the way that we look, our skin color, and that's it. And there's so many different aspects of how Black people have been put into these boxes of what they can and cannot be. They have not been allowed to be themselves. They are not allowed to appreciate who they are at birth. And one of those things is hair. And it seems so simplistic, but there is a lot of inner turmoil that happens with Black people in regards to something that may seem as simple as hair, and it's really not that simple. From the inability to feel like our natural hair is beautiful, the laws that were enacted here in the United States in which Black women were forced to wear head wraps because we were told that we were too sexually appealing for white men, and that when they strayed from their wives, it was their fault. It was Black women's fault that stuff like that was happening. To know the history behind braiding and its significance and how important that is to the Black community, how not being able to revel in our own hair culture has caused so many issues, not just historically, but even now in the present. So I was having this conversation with my coworker, and we really just adamantly discussed how there's so many different aspects when we talk about race, and particularly race here in the United States, because it's different. Racism is different in other places, but specifically here in the United States, looking at the Black community, and racism is not just this one big thing. There are a lot of parts and components to it that don't often get discussed. And the last one that I have for this question is Medical Apartheid: The Dark History of Medical Experimentation on Black Americans from Colonial Times to the Present by Harriet A. Washington. I was supposed to read this last year, and my intention was to read this last year. However, what ended up happening was that I read literally the first few pages of this book, and it's hard. It starts off talking about the statue that is put up of Dr. Sims, who is known for his work in gynecology, without people understanding how those advancements were made. And that already was very, 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 very hard for me, just knowing that a lot of the practices that we have in gynecological medicine, because of the practice being experimented on Black women without anesthesia against their will. So just within the first 4 pages, like 4 or 5 pages, you're like, this is going to be a tough ride. So I think that a lot of people who have seen me talk about this book there are a couple of people that have commented and said that they've read it, and you've got to be in the right headspace, like spiritually and mentally, to kind of dive into this book. But I think this is one that we all need to read, because once again, this is going back to the fact that there are different parts of racism, not just I don't like you because of your skin color. Like, this is how we have continuously harmed and traumatized an entire group of individuals, and we wonder why things are the way that they are today. So that wasn't a long-winded answer. I don't know what was. But on to question number 2. Which Black booktuber would you recommend watching and why? Oh gosh, there's such a long list. There's such a long list, and I don't want to leave anybody out, but I'm bound to leave someone out because it's just the nature of the beast here. Okay, so I definitely believe everyone should check out Bree from the Lockbooktician. Bree has amazing content, very unique content, and she focuses on a lot of mystery and thrillers that are particularly written by Black authors. And I think that that's a different lens that she's bringing to the booktube community, which I really, really appreciate. I would recommend Deidre from Shade Tree Reads, because Deidre is an omnivore when it comes to books. I don't think there's much that Deidre won't at least give like one try to. She reads all over the place, and I'm being biased here just because I love Deidre so much, but she has excellent reading taste and brings a lot of different ideas to the community as well. And Njeri from Onyx Pages, I think that a lot of you probably watch Njeri, but I definitely had to put her up here because a lot of my reads of Black science fiction and fantasy have come from her channel. The same with Chloe as well. Chloe has put me on to a lot of stuff, and I love the way Chloe's mind just work. Her and Njeri, their minds just are, you know, like you have those people that you're like, if I could just just spend some time like in your head and see the way that it works. Both of them are like that for me. I very much so admire their thoughts and perspectives on a lot of different things. Erica from The Broken Spine, very laid back, chill, relaxing atmosphere, reads a little bit of everything, has such insightful and thoughtful perspectives, and brings so much to the table, and does awesome book discussions with a little bit of everybody in the community. I believe she just did a whole book conversation with Josh, and they talked about Gilda stories. Britt and Melanin is is another channel that I would like to recommend. They have these awesome discussions that revolve around Black authors, just Black books in general. They just put a video up today that I need to watch, which is Black books that they're anticipating reading in 2021. I would also recommend BrittWriterly if you're looking for some great writers content. Britt has amazing discussions as well, and offers some great advice and insight to the mind of a writer. I would also say Erin from Booked and Busy. Erin reads a lot of high fantasy, a lot of epic fantasy that I would never put my hands on had I not heard of it, except from her. And she has a very relaxing and calm personality, so I really enjoy watching her channel. I would also recommend Olivia from Olivia's Catastrophe. They have amazing content. One particular series that is very intriguing that they have on their channel is, it's reading, I think it's like Read It Backwards. I can't remember the exact name of the series, but I think it's called Read It Backwards, where they actually reread their favorite series but read the last book first and then work their way to the first book, which I think is really cool, because if you think about it, it's like, you know, if you read a series, how much do you really remember? And then you can see how the series has developed, and things that happen in that final book, you can go back and see like how those things were set up, which I think is an amazing series. It's really, really cool. I would also recommend Lucie from Lucie Reads. Lucie Reads is just bomb, y'all. And Lucie probably is like, Ashley, do you even watch my channel like that? Probably a couple of people that I'm probably listening at right now don't even realize that I watch their channels, because I'm a silent viewer, which is not good. I'm trying to get so much better about that, but quite often I watch on my TV, so I can't comment, and then things get crazy and then I never go back to comment. So Lucie Reads also is another great Black booktuber that I would recommend, that has excellent content, does amazing reviews, does amazing wrap-ups, just has great discussions on their channel about a wide variety of books. And the last group of individuals that I will talk about, but I'll talk about them in a group because I really enjoy their group, and that is the Black Prose Club, which is made up of Brittany, O'Shaleigh, and Troy Nicole. And this is an amazing group. They have so many different discussions, from book club discussions, and then they have podcast nights where they talk about so many different topics. There's been topics about colorism, mental health, friendships. They just did one that was about like things they learned from their 20s. It just is really great conversation, and they're a great dynamic group. So I will make sure they each have their own social media information, so I'll make sure that I link it down in the description box. But I definitely would check out the group that they have formed, and they just celebrated their anniversary. I believe they have been doing this for a year now, which is really cool. And they also are doing it's a year-long readathon where they created a bingo board to help people read Black authors all year long, which is great. So definitely check them out. Great group of individuals that I highly respect and admire. And I will make sure that I leave everyone's information down in the description box for y'all to check out. Question number 3 is, what is your favorite book written by a Black author from an African country? So I actually have 3 for this one as well. The first one that I have here is Behold the Dreamers by Mbolo Mbu, and this author is from Cameroon. This is about a immigrant that moves from Cameroon to the States in order to create a pathway for his wife and his child, and he ends up working as a chauffeur for this wealthy white family. The father of the wealthy white family, I believe, works for Lehman Brothers, and it is a huge analysis about the American dream and our perceptions and thoughts of what the American dream is and what it actually is in reality. And this book is so good. I have not read this one in a while, so I'm due for a reread, but I really did enjoy this one. The next one that I have is Under the Udala Trees by Chinelo Akparanta, and this is a book by a Nigerian author, and it focuses on a young woman who is coming to terms with her sexuality in a country where she cannot express her sexuality. And it's very hard. It's a very hard read. It's difficult to see her progress through meeting another girl, realizing that they have feelings for each other, and having to hide those feelings, and having to, you know, force herself into a marriage that she didn't want to be in because she didn't like she didn't like men. She didn't want to be with men. And having to watch her go through those experiences was really tough, but it was just an important and very powerful book, and one that I probably also need to reread because I haven't reread it, or I haven't read it in a while. It's been a few years since I've reread that one. And the last one is one that I actually just read recently, and it is His Treasure, and this is the first book in the Men of Valor series by Kirute, and this is a Black love historical romance book in which we are meeting 2 characters. Our heroine is in a marriage which she claims she doesn't want to be in because she wanted to marry the prince, and her husband, who is the hero, is just this amazing, patient, loving, and caring guy who is completely in love with her, but refuses to try to force a relationship or refuses to force her into a situation that she doesn't want to be in. He respects the fact that she does not want to be physically intimate with him. He respects the fact that she wants to keep her distance. But it starts to become an issue because after a year of them being married, she hasn't had kids yet. And within her community, people are starting to question like the legitimacy of her marriage. So that's a huge thing. And then she starts to see him in a different light, and it goes from there. And it was so good. So good. I absolutely loved it. I can't wait to finish the rest of the series. Question number 4 is, what is your favorite Black classic? So I had to go with a favorite, like one of my favorite Black classics, and that is The Color Purple by Alice Walker. As I've said before, I believe I've read this book either 2 or 3 times at this point. I've read this book quite a bit. Absolutely love it. It's so complex in the way like it makes me feel, because there's parts of it that you really just like, oh, you hate because of the way that Celie is treated. But the way in which it's written, the conversations that Alice Walker has in this book, like, I love The Color Purple. I have not, once again, it's another one that I have not read in a while that I think I need to reread, but definitely one of my favorite Black classics. Number 5, which movie, book to movie adaptation, documentary would you recommend during Black History Month? Okay, so there are a couple of things, and I'm gonna just talk about 3, and they're all like historical, like nonfiction type of things. They're not anything that is they're not book to movie adaptations, which there are a lot out there, but these were 3 that, like, when I saw this question, they instantaneously came to my mind. So the first one is going to be I Am Not Your Negro, which is an intimate portrait of James Baldwin, and this is one that I watched for the first time during quarantine last year and absolutely fell in love with it. Fell in love with James Baldwin's mind and absolutely became so intimidated by him as a human. He is one of those writers out there, like his legacy and just his body of work, he scares me, and he scares me because of his brilliance, and it makes me so nervous. I don't know if that makes sense, but it makes me super nervous to read his works. But I Am Not Your Negro is just, it's very good. It's very good. I don't even know how to begin to explain the intricacy of that documentary, and just looking into different aspects of James Baldwin's life and looking at his views on race and the conversations that he had with people about race, and just watching, and this is what kills me, like me, and just like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could ever really just think that I could ever understand him, because he's just that brilliant. Watching him literally have conversations with people, like these intellectual debates, I was like, wow, this is on a different level. Like, this is like over my head type a different level. But it was one of the best documentaries that I've seen in a very long time. This summer I watched the Netflix adaptation, or Netflix documentary, not adaptation, the Netflix documentary 13, which is about the loophole in the 13th Amendment that has contributed to mass incarceration. And it talks heavily about how racism now is not racism as it was in the 60s and before the 60s, where people were able to get away, society was able to get away with using racial slurs and to basically keep the Black community from even doing things as simple as eating in a restaurant or going to the movie theater. Like, behavior like that is not socially acceptable anymore. So the way that we do racism now is through systemic ways. We weave it into our laws, we weave it into our policies, we do stuff like gerrymandering, redlining. We make sure that we still oppress an entire racial group without being overtly racist while doing it. And I think that that is just a key takeaway for a lot of people, which is why I always recommend it to a lot of people, because for some people still in 2021, the fact that we had a Black president seems to be this indicator that we are a post-racial society, when people don't realize that that is not the truth, that is not the world, that is not the United States in the least bit. And the documentary really opens up those doors and those avenues for people to truly understand the ways in which the Black community is still being oppressed by a lot of different things, a lot of different things that are happening in our laws and policies. All right, and the last one that I would recommend is Eyes on the Prize. This is a very old documentary series that started in the 1980s, I think around 1987, and was concluded within the first year or two of the 90s, so maybe like 90, 91. It was about 14 episodes. They were 16 minutes each, very long. The first part, I believe, covered most of the civil rights movement, and then the second part covered all the way up until the 80s, so right before the documentary actually started. And it's a very, very intimate look at Black history in its role in US history, the correlation and understanding that Black history is US history type of situation. So if you're looking for like more specific details, if you want to actually know like the history, I definitely would recommend this one. It is older. Like I said, the other two are newer. This one is older, so there may be some like dated type stuff to it, but it was my first introduction to a lot of history about race, and specifically Black history in the United States pertaining to the civil rights movement and up into the 80s. And it is a documentary that I grew up watching. Like family was very adamant about me watching it, so I learned a lot through watching it, so it's one that I would definitely recommend. Number 6 is what's on your TBR for Black History Month. I am going to link both my Blackathon at TBR as well as my what's on my radar and currently reading videos up there, so you can kind of get a feel of what I'll be reading this month. And the last question is, which new releases by Black writers are you looking forward to the most this year? So I actually have are we surprised that I have a list? We shouldn't be surprised that I have a list. So I do have that video where I talk about 45 different books that I'm looking forward to for 2021 that were all written by BIPOC authors. Of course, that includes Black authors in there, so I'll make sure I link that video in the card symbol. But some immediate ones that came to my head when I was thinking about this one specifically were The Cost of Knowing by Brittany Morris. This is her sophomore book, which I'm really looking for. This is the same author who wrote Slay. The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna, which I actually will be reading this one this month. I've heard great things about this. This one has heavy trigger warnings for violence because I believe that it is based on Namina's experience in Sierra Leone, so that's a heavy role into the themes of this book, which is Steep in Gold by Shannon Smart, which for me is a huge one because it is a Jamaican inspired fantasy. So I'm very excited for this one. This is one that I've also started and I'm currently reading at the moment. Taking my time with this one because of the fact that it does not come out until April 20th, but I just was like, you know, I really am enjoying it so far. I also have Angel of Greenwood by Randy Pink. This one looks a little bit at the Tulsa riots, and it features two characters that are on opposing views of how the Black community should advance itself. One is an avid follower of Booker T. Washington. The other is an avid follower of W.E.B. Du Bois. So very interested in how that narrative is going to work out. And the last one that instantaneously came to my mind when I thought about this question is Root Magic by Eden Royce. This one I believe has already been released if I'm not mistaken, but I am looking forward to reading this one. It looks at Root Magic. This takes place in South Carolina in 1963. This is all that I need right here. Super excited to pick this one up this month, actually. All right, y'all, that is the Black History Month book tab. Thank you so much to Helene for creating this tag. You are amazing, brilliant, wonderful person for even doing this. If you're interested in doing this tag, I'll make sure the questions are below. Please do it. Join in and sharing it. I think this is amazing to have this tag during this month to highlight books by Black authors, highlight Black creators, to send that reminder that we should be reading books by Black authors with Black characters all year long. All year long. Always, 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 always. As always, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, click the subscribe button, hit the bell for notification. If you're interested in supporting my channel or following me on social media, all the links will be down in the description box below. And I'll be back with another video soon.